That's how much Africa's economy has been projected to grow by in 2014.
West Africa holds the biggest potential.
And Nigeria leads the pack.
As the most important gathering on the continent converges on Abuja this year.
The Sunrise Daily team will be there as we explore the challenges and opportunities present in this year's World Economic Forum for Africa.
And Channels Television is your host broadcaster.
Welcome back. You're still watching Business Morning on Channels Television, and we're broadcasting live from Lagos, Nigeria. Of course, we know it's all about the World Economic Forum Africa meeting. And just before we went on that quick break, the president is actually spoke about the opportunities that this meeting is going to offer for Nigeria. Even though we know we have a huge amount of foreign direct investment coming into the country, this offers a better opportunity for investors, foreign investors especially, to come and see the potential of Nigeria. And of course, he said that during the media chat yesterday, and we're also looking forward to meeting him and speaking with him during the course of the meeting in Abuja to get his thoughts, more on his thoughts about the meeting. But investments are coming in, and of course, when investments are coming in, who are the target consumers? And so it becomes very important to know if the consumers' rights will be protected when we have more of these investments coming in. Will it give a more competitive space for everybody to ensure that they protect, or they ensure that the consumer gets the best of the product while also being protected? Well, I'm going to be talking with the Director General of the Consumer Protection Council, Mrs Dupe Atoki, and we're hoping to get answers on some of these questions and others that will come up in the course of the conversation. But good morning, Mrs Atoki, and thank you so much for coming in this morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Now, it's been a year, almost a year, since you assumed the position of DG, Consumer Protection Council. How would you say the council has fared in this period?
I would have liked that this assessment would have come from an outside perspective. But then I would quickly say that I think in the last 1 year, what has come out so quickly is that there is an enhanced visibility for the Consumer Protection Council as an agency of government responsible for the protection of consumers. I say that on a benchmark of against the assessment that was carried out just before I resumed office on the assessment of CPC in Nigeria. And the findings were that consumer literacy was low, consumer apathy is high, consumer protection is almost minimal, and CPC's visibility is equally low. And thereon I developed a strategy which I thought should help to immediately begin to protect consumers in all the various sectors. You will agree with me that every sector of the economy has huge consumer abuses. And for me, it was a challenge to decide, where do I go from? And I developed a strategy to carry out sector interventions rather than attending to individual complaints. And so I intervene in aviation sector, in banking sector, in food and beverage, and each intervention will have a roller coaster effect on all the industries, and it will help in cleaning the system faster than dealing with thousands or millions of individual complaints. And so that has helped, I believe, to give the visibility that we now have, and based on the report that we get from comments from social media, from individuals, and even from newspaper write-up, that there is an increased visibility of the CPC in the last 1 year.
Well, that would still, almost seem correct, but then there's still some argument in some quarters that the consumer still hasn't begun to feel the impact of the CPC as a protector of their rights, because as you said, complaints come, and instead of treating these complaints individually, you try to deal with them as a group. But has the CPC tried to educate the public on this fact that it is not as if it's totally oblivious of the challenges that they experience as consumers, that in Nigeria, but because they want to ensure that there's a holistic approach to how they treat these issues, which is the reason why it seems as if they get this impression that the CPC is not pulling its weight.
Let me say that I would like to intervene from the point of when I took over office, and that was a little less than a year ago. And so what has happened prior to that, I would not be able to hold brief. But to say that, yes, there is need for massive consumer awareness, that I know. There is need for that. And I'm not totally discarding individual complaints. No, we still treat individual complaints.
But what is the response time you used to treat individual complaints?
From when I took over office, I escalated it to not less than 48 hours where you get a response from us. And the response is, we need to get to the other side and ask their opinion, because we can't just take a complaint and take a decision on it. We need to hear the side of the supplier or the manufacturer, and then we come back and get a decision. So immediate response from us, 48 hours, yes, we have received your complaint, we are looking at it. And the length of time now will depend on the nature of the complaint. So that's why I believe that in areas where there are massive consumer abuses, what we can do quickly is that we take up an investigation into that sector and come up with findings which will then affect the behavior of all the industries in that sector. Now, I take an example of the recent intervention in the airlines, for which the aero contractors' airlines was found in violation of the Passengers' Bill of Rights, where almost 40 passengers were abandoned at the airport overnight, and they had to sleep at the tarmac. Now, these are 49 complaints, but that is an opportunity for me to get to the company and to say, you need to change your process. And that led to findings for compensation for each of the passengers, which is a direct intervention, individual intervention, like you will say, but on a holistic basis.
So, Mrs. Atoki, still talking about this particular issue that you've brought up now, it takes, for instance, if an individual makes a complaint, it takes 48 hours. Then how long does it take for you to make the investigation?
As soon as we immediately we then do a letter to the respondent immediately.
So how long will it take, or how long do you give the respondent to reply?
We give them 7 days.
7 days.
Yes.
And then after that, you say, because it's very important that people begin to understand that the CPC is actually there to protect them. When they see punishment being meted out to such companies or such organizations that infringe on their consumer protection rights, that's the only time they're going to believe that the CPC is actually taking its role very seriously. So in terms of, punishing, or yes, meting out punishment to offenders or people who infringe on consumer protection rights, how much of this has been recorded in the 1 year that you've been in office?
Well, I would say that in 1 year, I cannot change the climb and the way in which businesses run their activities, because impunity is ingrained. You still find recalcitrant responses even from the respondents. But I would say that we have recorded, for instance, a replacement of a SUV that was purchased, which did not meet the guarantee that was given, and a brand new replacement was given. We do have this results. It's just that it's not in the air, because the complainant brought a complaint of having bought a brand new car and it was unserviceable, and for 2 years it was going in and out of the garage. And we intervened, and the later model of the SUV was replaced brand new. So that is a redress, which would not have happened within 2 days, as we expect.
Now, in this case of the aero contractors and infringement on consumer rights and the rest of it, will there be any form of of redress to protect the cost, because you see, the only way they're going to be happy is if they feel that a form of punishment is meted out to forestall any other airline from doing the same thing. Then we're going to come to the case of where we expect to see a huge flow of investment coming in because of what's happening in Nigeria. Nigeria is in the spotlight and the rest of it. So could you just respond to this before we get to that? Because it's all tied in. We're going to see an influx of investors coming in, and they're not just going to be coming to one particular sector of the economy. They're going to be going everywhere. And majorly, they're going to be looking at the aviation sector, because that is one sector that we've not really seen so much progress as we would have loved to see. And this is a very good opportunity for domestic players to try to see the opportunities that they can harness from this sector. And so they should also know that apart from the fact that you're protecting the consumers, their own rights too, as operators, are also protected.
Let me say that for the aero contractors, the passengers have been, recommendations have been made for redress. There are financial compensations that have been awarded. A total, I think, about over 40,000 naira per passenger will be paid by aero. That is our findings. So that is a redress that can be quantified, and that is for 40 plus passengers. And that's the only redress that we can give in the context of the violation of the airline vis-a-vis the law protecting the consumers. The law requires that for every hour of delay, you give a refreshment. For 2 hours, you give a meal. For delay exceeding 10 p.m. to 4 p.m., you put them in a hotel. And so we have monetized all these rights.
What about sanctioning the contractor? What about sanctioning the airline?
That is within the Nigerian Civil Aviation purview. We do not have the power to sanction, but the only sanction we have is to protect consumers. And we have done that by ensuring that consumers receive damages for the inconveniences they have suffered. The sanction for the airlines is within the purview of the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority. And it's not an area that we are, as protector of consumers, can go in. I just want to find out what are the consumers entitled to. And you are indirectly sanctioning the airline when you ask them to pay compensation. That's sanction. But there is the other sanction that the NCA also imposes on them by fining them for every hour of delay. They have it in their rules, in their data. So that goes into the pocket of the federal government or the NCA, as it were, but it doesn't translate to protection for consumers. But for me, there are two ambits of that consumer, the Bill of Rights. One is for the technical compliance of airlines. The other is for protection of passengers, which nobody had taken up prior to now. So I came in and I realized that there is this provision of the Passengers Bill of Rights that protects passengers. And so I took it up and carried out an investigation. I was able to say to this airline, this is what you need to do. And why I say that I need to do a sector intervention is that once an airline is held responsible, I believe that all the others would, in accordance to their best practice, key into these findings and not want themselves to be made a subject of investigation again. Okay,
Mrs. Atoki, let's take a quick break.
Yeah.
Catch our breath and come back and continue this conversation.
All right, that's fine.
You're a member or a former member of the Nigerian Human Rights Commission, and of course you're a lawyer. And so when we come back, we're going to be now looking very closely at the law. For instance, there's this argument that the law is not competitive enough to allow to ensure that customers get goods, services and products from the industry in such a way that will also encourage more investors to come in. And it almost seems as if they come in to bully customers. Well, we'll talk more about that in just a moment. You're still watching this morning on Channels Television, and we're talking about attracting investment, or we're looking at how protected Nigerian consumers are, and I've been having this conversation with the Director General of the Consumer Protection Council, Mrs. Dupe Atoki. She's going to be here with me when I return in just a moment. Please stay with us.